All right, good morning, everyone. Shalom. Shalom. All right. Welcome to Up to the Challenge. We're going to focus on marriage today. Love and marriage. Okay, never mind. All right. Okay, we have about an hour and a half to get this done. And so let me go ahead and get started. I see we got a good crowd in here today. Now, one of the rules for today's class is you spouses that are sitting together, keep the elbows to yourself. and the nasty glare when you say, "See, I told you." Okay, so we'll minimize that. Just a suggestion, for group counseling. Okay, welcome to marriage group therapy. All right. Awesome. All right, so we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about it from the perspective of marriages in general, relationships in general, actually, but marriages in general. Then we're going to talk a little bit, hopefully, about equally yoked situations, unequally yoked situations. And the unequally yoked situations will cover both when the husband is the one that's in covenant and the wife is not, and then the other way around, when the wife's in covenant and the husband's not. All right? All right, so I do a lot of counseling with couples, with marriages. And I got to tell you, there's times when I pray and I go, Abba, why did we decide that this was the right way to go? Okay, I'm kidding. Whose idea was this and thought this would work? It's hard, okay? It is hard. And it's hard because it involves two very dysfunctional, selfish people. It just is. And somebody thinks, don't you call me selfish? There you go. All right, with fragile egos and lots of pride and all this other stuff. So let's go into the basics, okay? The basics is that all relationships have this one thing in common. Relationships only work if the two people in the relationship agree on how it's going to work. Amos 3:3 says, would two walk together without having met? And that's the way the translation is in the ISR. And you say, well, what do you mean without having met? Well, why would they walk together? In other words, that they have a meeting of the minds, a meeting of the relationship. And without having agreed is another translation that you may have seen in some of the other Bibles. How could you walk together without being in agreement? And it's, that's a truth. If you have two people trying to do something together and they don't agree on how to do it, it doesn't generally get done, and it certainly doesn't go well. And so the biggest part of all of this is to understand that marriage has to be an agreement. You can't just unilaterally agree for both of you. This is especially to you men, okay? You can't just be the husband and think, well, I'm the boss, I'm the head, and she just no, not unless she agrees. She has to agree to all submission in a properly structured vertical, okay? All submission is voluntary. Okay, authority is never imposed down the vertical. It doesn't work. It causes only hurt feelings, issues, problems, etc., anger, upset, and of every nature. So let's always remember that in his vertical, not the way we do it the other way. We want to, I'm in charge, I'm the husband, I'm the father, stop all that. If the person you're talking to had not agreed to that, then it's never going to work. We come into submission to Messiah and to the Father because we choose, not because they make us. It's a voluntary submission, amen? All right. So your marriage problem, and this is where, when people talk to me about, being unequally yoked or whatever the situation is, I say, look, it ultimately comes down to if it's a marriage problem, that marriage problem is because you're not agreeing about how you're going to walk together. Now, bear in mind as I say this, that you do have the freedom to have all kinds of wide varieties of how you walk together. In other words, how one couple walks together doesn't have to be the way that another one does. So don't necessarily look to me to tell you, this is what the man does, and this is what the woman does. Well, that's maybe some general ideas of how that looks in Scripture, but really, it's how you agree to walk. I've seen some couples do really badly when the woman made the money and the man didn't. And I've seen some couples do very well when the woman made the money and the man didn't. It doesn't matter of how well they agreed about it, okay? And so it has to be by agreement that things work. So I want you to think about all the issues in your marriage. We're going to cover things that I'm sure will kind of hit on everything that are causing those things. But mainly it has to do with agreement. Okay, you have to be in agreement. Now here's the problem. Problem is almost none of you, unless I did your wedding and counseled you before your wedding, almost none of you were given guidance to figure out about the level of agreement you have before you got married. I never was given that. It just said, I love you, you love me, great, let's get married. And we find someone willing to do the ceremony, and we say the blah, blah, blah in sickness and health, and we think we're all great. And then we get into the marriage, and we have all these problems, and we act like, what happened? Well, because you never talked about it and came into agreement about what would happen. This is the problem. Now, the good news is it's not too late. You could still do the things that I would have had you do before marriage, after marriage, so that you learn to come into agreement. You also may realize that you're just not going to be able to come into agreement. Now, let's talk about it from this point of view. In your marriage, you're going to have, if you're not in agreement, you're going to have your drama, trauma, nonsense, and all the other stuff. That drama, trauma, and nonsense, there's only three options in dealing with that stuff. Okay, either you're going to fix it and work it out and get counsel, or you're going to accept it and be okay with it and stop whining about it, or you're going to end it. And if you don't understand that being an option, go listen to the teaching on divorce, remarriage, okay? And it's really important that we understand that, okay? Now, the fourth option is not acceptable. Staying in and being miserable and causing misery. You can't stay in yelling and screaming and fighting and whining and complaining and think that that's acceptable. That isn't healthy, physically, emotionally, for you and everybody that's affected around you. It is not good. You need to fix it, let it go and be okay with it, or get out. Now, I did that in the order of preference. The preference is to fix it, to work it out. If that's not going to be worked out that way, then you have to decide, can I just accept this and tolerate it and be okay with it without all that negative stuff? Because if you're going to tolerate it and keep it all inside, a lot of you with the white personality, you understand what I'm talking about? That's only going to lead to an explosion. You have to legitimately be okay with it. And just be like, I understand that's the way they are, and I'm okay with it. And you have peace with it. It's not what you wanted. It's not what you preferred, but you're okay with it, right? You can't tolerate. Tolerating is not what I'm talking about. Because tolerating is slow misery. It's a slow simmer of just not happy. You shouldn't tolerate a relationship. It should be working towards this idea of thriving and flourishing. Or it should be, I accept that I could be happy at this level with some of these things that maybe are not my preference. And the fighting thing and the yelling and the screaming and all of the anger and bitterness, just no, okay? Doesn't work. And because I did mention that whole tolerance thing, all of you out there that are living those lives of quiet desperation and miserable in your relationships, I recommend that you need to say something. You need to at least counsel individually, if not together, and let your spouse know, but not in an attacking way. If your spouse loves you, they should not want you to be this level of tolerating misery. They should want you to be happy. I mean, I would like to think that all of you got married because you wanted to be happy and you wanted the other person to be happy. Okay? I mean, that would be what you initially wanted. This is great. Let's do this forever and we'll be happy. No. It takes a lot of work. It doesn't just automatically like, hey, we got married. Now it's all going to be wonderful. And being married is not the same as dating. It's not the same as the time you spent together in the dating process. Because you really don't know a person like you know them when you live with them every day. And you can't predict that in advance. And this is not in any way to be taken as a hint towards an endorsement of living together before marriage. But you can get yourselves to a place of agreement so that when things come up when you live together that you didn't necessarily see quite the way that you do now at that point that you are living together in the state of marriage, you have these techniques, and I'm going to encourage you with. All right, so again, there's going to be at times trauma, drama, nonsense. You're either going to work it out, fix it, and make the effort. I recommend that you counsel. I recommend that both of you counsel. I also would recommend that only one counseling will have a very limited effect. The best that one counseling can do is probably get you to the second level, which is where you can be at peace with everything and still be happy. Single counseling is not going to necessarily be good at fixing it and working it out. Because I can promise you, and all of you that think this, you're wrong. It's never the one person's fault, everything. There's always some piece of it that's you, even if it's the way you react to something as opposed to causing. You may not be the causal problem, but your way of reacting to it makes it worse or causes some issues and that kind of thing. And by react to it, I mean even the fact that you may not be reacting to it is causing a problem because you're enabling and allowing it to keep going. So everybody has a little piece in this. No matter what, there's some piece in this, okay? Now, don't forget there's no fourth option, right? Okay, the last choice, of course, was to end the marriage, and that is a terrible choice. But it is better than the misery of two people bitterly, angrily, almost hating each other. Just everybody is miserable. But you want to make sure that you've tried step one or step two first. Try to work it out. See if it's fixable. See if you can get to a place where you can tolerate and be happy still and just accept that that's the way the other person is. All right? You have a child. I'll give you an example. You have a child. That child, no matter what you do, leaves all their stuff on the floor of their room, right? They're just sloppy. They're slobs. They're sloppy. They just don't care. So you could either keep being angry at that child, yelling and screaming and thinking it's going to make any difference, which it won't. But some it does, and then they fix it, right? But the one I'm talking about, the one that no matter what you do, nothing changes. So what are you going to do, hate the child? Okay? Or you can accept and work within that time frame, within that framework of what's going on. I've got one of those. I walk into the child's room, I see the mess, and I call the child. I say, and they fix it. I don't get angry, even if I have to do this every day. I accept. Now, of course, I'm very red, and I don't care, so I don't do this every day. But Mom, who's blue, cares about it, and so I help to do that more often than not. Okay? I mean, if you want to live in squalor, that's your problem. All right? It's not my issue. If you're wearing clothes and you can't remember if they're the clean pile or the dirty pile because they're all in the same pile, that's your problem. Okay? Mom about hits the ceiling when Mom brings in the clean clothes and finds them on top of or underneath the dirty clothes that end up in the room. Why can't you put them away? No. But you can still love someone if they're doing things that you really would not be the way you would want it done. It depends on if you can accept the fact that some of the stuff I said is, right, we have drama, trauma, and then I said nonsense. The nonsense category is more the things that you get upset about, but you probably have no reason to really get upset about. In other words, it's not the way you want it, but so what? But you can't get to the so what. The drama and trauma is much more intrusive. In other words, somebody doing something or not doing something that somewhat peripherally gets in your way or isn't the way you want it is more the nonsense. Somebody actually inserting themselves into or affecting you directly is where more we get the drama and trauma. Or the drama and trauma comes from the overreact to the nonsense. Do we follow that? Okay. And that's where we really get the big issues. I would say good 50% maybe more in some of your cases, maybe less in others, of what you deal with is nonsense. Just stuff that you personally don't like or the other person personally doesn't like and wants to make a big issue of because they think it's life-altering. It has to be this big deal. The dishes have to be done a certain way. The cabinets have to be a certain way. You didn't vacuum this week, or you didn't change the sheet, or you didn't take the garbage out. Why would you leave it? It's nonsense. I got family members that take the garbage out of the garbage pail and then put it by the door instead of walking 10 more feet and putting it in the pail. The door that goes out into the garage where the pail is like 10 feet. I would prefer it the other way. It bothered me initially, and then I realized it's nonsense that I would be getting upset about. That it's nonsense for me to get upset about. It's not nonsense to prefer it done a certain way, because it would actually be better done that way. But for me to get upset about it, right, is foolish. I sit there going, I don't get it. I was like, really? You can, it's like when you walk around in public, right? You got the public garbage, and there's garbage right on the floor next to the pail. Like you couldn't move an extra 3 feet to just, put it in the pail. But it's our level of emotional response that causes the marriage problems. We're not emotionally responding very well. Okay? So I'm trying to give you things that this goes in all marriages, whether you're equally yoked or not. Equally yoked or not. Okay, so you got 2 people that are married. And these people have different personalities. That's why I recommend highly that we all do a personality test of some sort. We recommend the color code because it's so simple and easy to understand and fairly accurate. Did you guys all enjoy doing that? Did you find it to be fairly accurate as far as you understanding you and your spouse or that kind of thing? Maybe even also understanding your children a little bit. And so what we're trying to do here is to observe. Okay, I'm going to give you a certain process here. When you're in all relationships, you must be observing. You have to be paying attention. And as you're observing the other person, you observe your spouse, you observe your children, you should be learning them. This is where you can then hopefully adjust. You have to learn them. What makes them happy? What doesn't? What style of interaction gets a result? What style of interaction doesn't? Some children, all you got to do is give them a look. Some children, you may have to raise your voice. Some children, you may have to reason with. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? You have to learn and then adjust to what works. But it only is going to happen, and the ability to learn and adjust is if you're paying attention. You have to observe. And so what I think the personality thing does is it helps you to understand that there's a reality that we all struggle with, which is that other person, just like you, except that in our hypocrisy, we want people to accept us and understand that this is me and my limitations, this is what I can do. We forget that the same thing is with the other person. And so we have people that we're interacting with that have what almost can really be called things that they can't do. There's also a lot of things that they won't do, but there's also things that they can't do, or at least not do easily. And so when you realize that your child is yellow, you realize that they probably can't get their head wrapped around taking their clothing right away and putting it away properly in a drawer. And it's not a negative on them, okay? It's just something that you expecting them to be able to do is actually your fault. And you're thinking, well, I don't understand why they can't do this simple thing. Because they just can't easily. That doesn't mean they can't do it at all. But they'd have to have an incentive and a reason and a desire to overcome the natural behavior, the natural personality default. Does it make sense so far, right? Your child who's got the white personality is never going to be on your schedule. Never going to be at your timing. Never going to be doing it at your speed. Unless they have a reason to go against or overcome their default. So there are those moments where they do, but it's because they chose to do something consciously instead of reacting in their natural default. But if you don't accept it, that's kind of the point, and adjust to it, then that's where the strife and the nonsense all turns into trauma and drama. While you're dating, and then even once you get married and you're living together, you should be paying really good attention. And someone's like, I'm paying attention, and boy, no, not that kind of attention. Oh yeah, I think I've seen enough. But you should know what things put a smile on your spouse's face, what things make them comfortable and happy and have peace, and what things irritate the everything out of their, as we say, just irritate them to death. And you learn those really well because at some point you push them on purpose because you're mad. That's what we call those buttons, right? Oh, you're pushing my buttons. Well, I've been paying attention. I know where the buttons are. Beep, 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 boop, boop. And then the bomb goes off, right? Why aren't you paying attention to that so that you can avoid those things? And you can recognize and adjust. But because I think it's stupid that he needs this to be this way, or I think it's really dumb that she needs this to... It doesn't matter what you think it is, what it is. You accept it, and if you don't like it, you can talk about and negotiate and adjust. Because maybe your spouse can adjust that thing that's irritating you a little bit, and then the things that you're doing that irritate your spouse a little bit, you can adjust too. I tell people often when we do the marriage counseling type of stuff, this is going to hopefully make sense. Nobody wins unless nobody wins. All right? Everybody has to lose in a little bit. If you're going, because winning means I got what I wanted. I got it my way. I won. Guess what happens if there's a winner? There's a loser. You didn't get what you want. The only way to win is for nobody to win, is to have each one get some of what they wanted. Then everybody can have enough to be considered I won. But you have to be able to do that. You can't need to win, because that's at an expense of a loser. Someone wins, someone had to lose. Nobody wants to feel like the loser. So if you voluntarily, if you offer up, I'm willing to have less of this or to not have that in order for me to have you give me this, which you really didn't want to give me, and then you would negotiate these type of things, okay? And they can be really, I was going to call them dumb, because that's, again, I'm filtering through my own perspective when I'm thinking of something that is important to my wife and not to me. So to me, I think it's dumb. But to her, it's important. See, and that's the wrong thing to be thinking. So I can take something that I think is small, but she thinks is important, and say, okay, I'm going to adjust to that and allow that we'll do some of those things that she thinks is important. By the same token, we'll have a discussion about something I think is important. I think she doesn't understand why it's important. And she says, well, I don't think that, So she feels the same way about some of my stuff that I feel about her stuff. And so the only way for this to work is to adjust. So through observation, very early on in our marriage, we came to realize that we have a very different opinion on picture taking. And that sounds like maybe to some people a very serious thing. Some people may go, well, what's the big deal with that? It is a big deal if one person really wants to take a picture of everything in every moment, and the other person finds that irritating. I'm just saying, if you want to do something and you think it's great and wonderful, and the other person finds it irritating, I used an example of picture taking, that could create a challenge. Because at some point, the person that's irritated says, knock it off, I don't want to do this anymore. And the person who's doing it is all offended, like, why? Why is it such a big deal? And really, it shouldn't be a big deal for either person. But why can't we adjust and allow a person to have a little bit of joy in what they want, but they should adjust to you and give you a little bit of joy in what you want? They should understand, this is the adjusting, right? The observing, the understanding, the learning each other. My wife had to learn, I don't mind pictures while doing something. I don't like to stop very red, right? I don't want to be interrupted to stop to take a picture. Now, I'm not saying this is right or wrong way to approach things. This is someone explaining me, right? And my wife loves to document. She doesn't want to just catch live action things. She wants to stop, take a picture before we eat the meal. Stop, take a picture in front of this building. Stop, take a picture in front of that. Stop, take a picture. She wants to just document all these moments. And I'm glad she does, because later on when I look at the pictures, I like that I have some documentation. But at that moment, my red gets irritated with, you're interrupting what I'm doing. I'm trying to get something done. Even if it's fun, right? I'm trying to enjoy this. I want to sit at the table. The food comes. I just want to eat my food. Oh, no, we got to stop. Wait for a waiter or waitress. Take a picture. Smile. Okay? And some of you think, well, what's so wrong with that? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. It irritates me. That doesn't mean that it should irritate anybody else, right? But my wife had to learn that. But I also had to learn how important it was to her to do this. Okay? So we didn't do the exercise that I teach, and I'll talk about that in a minute, before getting married, where you set your expectations, etc. So during the marriage, we had to then talk about, okay, I recognize that this is important to you. I want you to recognize that it irritates me terribly. So can we do a little of it and maybe a little less of it, if you understand what I'm saying? Let's do it, but maybe not as much, so you allow that I'm not going to be as irritated, and I allow that you really need to do this. Or if we have the family together at an entertainment place of some sort, like a park of some sort, at some point, if I tell you that's enough pictures, you don't argue and just say, okay. And I will make sure that I and the children, all of us behave for those pictures until I say we're done. Because then we have an enjoyable time doing it willingly instead of like, oh, I'm going to take the picture. Terrible fake smile. And we have a memory now of how miserable we were. I want you to listen to this story and think about the things like that in your marriage that you guys do. Because some of you are thinking, oh, yeah, man, he does some stuff that just really, or she does some stuff that just, but do you understand that it's important to the other person? Okay? And so you're not going to get it all your way. So instead of taking 23 pictures, I may say, okay, we'll get 10. All right? But you kind of each have to say, okay, I'm not going to get it all the way I want, but if I can do it with a smile and doing it as a gift to the other person, and both are doing that. Her not taking more pictures is a gift to me. My taking the pictures is a gift to her. Okay? My gift to all of you is waiting until you were all ready for the group picture until I showed up. But that way I wasn't sitting irritated waiting to take a picture. And we adjust to that. My wife understands, and my whole staff understands how so they're like, we're going to get everybody set, then Rabbi, you can come over and sit down. We'll just take the picture and you can get up and leave. We adjust to each other, okay? But we adjust by paying attention. You did that a little bit in the dating process because that's how you scored lots of little points with each other, because you observed and noticed, hey, when this happened, he didn't like it or she didn't like it. Or when that happened, she seemed to light up a little bit, or he seemed to he liked that. And then we start to do a little bit more of the stuff they liked and a little bit less of the stuff that you saw didn't work. But somehow when we get married, we don't care anymore. We just want what we want. And the other person somehow needs to adjust to us, and without us adjusting the other way. I'm telling you, this is the core of all the problems. All right. So you need to observe and learn. That's why the personality thing helps quite a bit. There's a second aspect to that, and I have people before they get married do the color code test so they can understand each other. And then we talk about it a little bit if they want, to make sure they understand, okay, so I'm married to a whatever, and you're this color. How does that interact? I'm blue, he's white. He's blue, I'm yellow. Whatever it is. He's red, I'm white. Whatever the color combination is, we can talk about where you might find really great success and where your challenges might be. And so it helps you. But you need to then see them as having this very strong default way of responding to life situations. That they're not doing it to irritate you. They're not doing it to be a problem. It's who they are. Now, that doesn't put you in a place of saying, well, it's too bad on you. It's the way I am. You just got to have to deal with it. No. It's the way they are unless they choose to do something different than their default. I have a broken personality spectrum because I don't have any of 2 of the 4 types of personality styles. And in there at all, I have no white, no blue. So I can do those things. I have to do them with thought. I don't do them naturally. All of you can do the same thing. If you're very, whatever color you're very, even the ones that you have less of, you can be as much of that if you want. You just have to do it with a little bit more conscious effort. See, now that you're a husband, or now that you're a wife, you have to realize, by default, you're a man or a woman. You think like a man, you think like a woman. But now you have to change that. A man is not a husband. A husband is a very specific, specialized type of man. Okay? A wife is not just a woman. It's a specialized form of woman. So coming into a marriage, and you're going to be a woman, and he's going to be a man, you are going to have problems. Because men and women are very different. Men and women are not designed to just naturally mesh together and see eye to eye, because we see the world and everything very differently. Notwithstanding the personalities and everything else. Just the fact that you're a woman and he's a man. The 2 of you are not going to see things and respond to things in the same way. So if you stay a woman and he stays a man in a marriage, you're going to have problems. What you need to become is the specialized type, which is the husband and the wife. That will work in a marriage. So when people have marriage problems and they come and fight and this and that, and they come and get some counseling, the problem is they're already divorced, they're just living in the same house. Because a marriage working is 2 walking together in agreement, and they're not fighting because they're in agreement. And so people look at me like, well, I don't know, should I get a divorce? I'm like, I don't know, do you want to be married? Right now you look like you're already divorced. You just live together and fight, and you're miserable. Because you're being a woman and he's being a man. Somewhere in that mix, we're not getting husband and wife things working right. Because of the nature of what it means to be a husband or a wife as opposed to just a man and a woman. We don't have time to flesh that all out right now, but I'm just giving you some thoughts to understand. If you think, well, I'm the man or I'm a woman and he needs to, well, no, you should be a wife and he should be a husband. You know that this is true. You know what? When you were single, you know that life was a little bit different. Then you got married, life was different. Then you had children, if you did have children, and you realized being a man wasn't enough to be good at being a father. Being a husband really didn't help in being a father. You needed to learn how to be this other specialized thing called a father. Same thing for the woman, right? Being a woman didn't necessarily make you a good wife, and being a wife wouldn't make you necessarily a good mother. You have to turn the thoughts into what is the specialized things I need to develop to be a good mother, to be a good father. It's a specialized type of woman or man. Is this making some sense to everybody? Okay? And so you have to be in that correct mindset, role appropriate. I can't talk to my children the way I might talk to my wife. I can't talk to my wife or children the way I might talk to my guy friends. And I could be a man amongst other men. I've got to be a husband, though, with my wife. I've got to be a father with my children. And this is the same for the ladies, right? You can be a woman with all your women friends, but you have to be a wife with your husband. You got to be a mother with your children. And when we do the teenage class tomorrow, there's a time where the father and mother role have to change dramatically as the children become teenagers. Because you can't parent them the same as you did when they were 5 and 6. Because it will not work. As a matter of fact, it'll blow up in your face. It'll only make things worse. Now, some of the trouble you guys have in your marriages are because some of these other roles insert themselves where they don't belong. Okay, nobody wants to be parented as an adult. This happens more with the ladies to the men than the men to the ladies, but it does happen both ways. But ladies, you have to understand, there's not a man alive that wants a mother. He's got one or doesn't have one at this point. He doesn't want one living in his house. He left his mother's house because he didn't need that. Now, you may think he needs a mother. Well, he might need one because of the way he behaves and everything. He doesn't want one, and he's not going to react well to it. In other words, he might act like a child in some ways, and so you naturally think to mother him. No, he needs to get around some men that will kick him in the butt. His wife, acting like a mother, she's now changed roles, wearing the wrong hat. Okay, you don't want to wear the woman hat, and you don't want to wear the mother hat, you got to wear the wife hat. Now, guys, if you don't like this, how about realizing that the only reason she's doing it is because you are acting like you need a mother? I know that hurts. I know you don't like it, but it could be true. And so that's where this pride, ego, and all this other emotional junk comes in, the insecurities and the self-image stuff and any kind of childhood traumas and dramas and PTSD. It all gets triggered. But I've listened to lots of programs on marriages, and one of the things in the ladies program, and the lady was teaching ladies, and she said, ladies, you need to understand the thing that will get your husband more frustrated, more mad, more quickly is if you try to be his boss or his mother. Don't be the boss, don't be the mother. Gentlemen, if the wife is doing this, you may want to examine yourself. You may not like what she's doing, and she shouldn't do it, but there's probably reason why she's doing it, a reason. You're not getting it done on some level, okay? And so own either side of this, okay? Own it. Now, with this whole coming in together, we're observing each other, we're adjusting to each other, so we're learning things about our personalities. You know, I tell this story on a regular basis. I had a couple call me. Actually, this gentleman found me. I don't know how he found me. He's not even part of our ministry. He found me, I think, through the divorce video or something, but he called me up. He was a Jewish guy, married to a somewhat covenanted woman. He was struggling with some different things, but he was willing to listen to this Messianic rabbi. And he was really struggling because of his personality and that he couldn't seem to convince his wife that it wasn't that he didn't love her, he just really struggled to do certain things. And I listened to him talk about that, and he said, and so he would just counsel with me just for him, and then she became willing to listen to me a little bit and like interact a little bit. And in our conversation, she kept saying, well, I don't know why he can't just tell me he loves me, why he can't just, the light bulb just exploded in my head. What if it's a can't, not a won't? So you're yelling at this man, or to me about this man, because you're mad at him because you think he won't do it, and there's reasons why he won't do it. Because he doesn't want to, he doesn't love you, or whatever, doesn't respect you, doesn't want to listen. Well, what if it's a can't? That's where that personality stuff comes in. You're not going to get your white or yellow child to act blue or red. You're not going to get your blue or red child to work out. In other words, you're not going to get a husband and wife the same thing. If you are married to whatever you're married to, some things they just can't do, certainly not without a lot of effort. Depending on how bad it is, it may take a lot of effort. And as soon as I said that to her, I said, what if he's broken? What if he just can't do it? And she said, I never thought of that. And they ended up, and he had been kicked out of the house at this point, and they were not living together. They got back together. Because he was working with me and working on it and recognizing that what he was struggling with was something he couldn't do naturally, that he was going to have to consciously put in the effort. And she recognized his challenge and his brokenness in that area where he just could not naturally think to do certain things. And so that's where we end up in that situation of adjusting and accepting and observing. But you can always run into the real hard challenge of misinterpreting through your filters what you're observing. And so she felt and interpreted it as he won't do it. I don't know why he won't do it. Maybe he doesn't love me. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe doesn't he know how important it is to me? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever, right? Without ever considering, wow, maybe this is an area where he has some brokenness. Ladies, the same thing. The guys need to be looking at the ladies and recognizing there may be some brokenness there. We're all broken. Let's just own that right up front. Everybody is screwed up. We're all, don't say, well, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. Well, who grew up in a functional one? So you're not special or different. Nobody grew up in a functional one. Everybody grew up in a somewhat dysfunctional or majorly dysfunctional family. Why? Because there's never been a priority to teach people how to do all that. You know, the two biggest things you do in life don't require any training or licensing whatsoever. Getting married and having children. That's stupid. It just is. We do these two biggest things with no guidance whatsoever, unless you ask and go seek it out for yourself. But you're not required to have any guidance. That's just really foolish. And then we wonder why we have such a hard time in our marriages and with our children. Well, I don't know, because you got no training? And the only training you got was observing everybody else do it badly? I mean, that's all we have is observing everybody else. And so, of course, it goes badly. All right. So, with this whole deal that you're doing, I want to give you the exercise that I give everybody before they get married, but you can do it now. It's the expectations exercise. And really what this is all about is you accepting the reality that you have, whether you thought about it consciously or not, an idea of what your role is as a husband or your role is as a wife. And you already have, whether you thought about it in clarity or not, an expectation of what the role of the other person is, husband or wife. You already have an idea. So when you get mad at your spouse, like, well, you're the husband, you're supposed to, or you're the wife, you're supposed to, and the person looking at you goes, what? What made you think that's what a wife does or a husband does? Well, of course, doesn't everybody know that? You know? And so when you get married, and a lot of you have heard me say this over and over again, but you need to hear it again. When you get married, you both have, whether you thought about it or not, some really clear expectations about what you're offering the other person, in other words, what they can expect from you, and what you expect from them. Only problem is, since you never talked about it, you don't realize that you're not on the same page. Because you both have an idea of what the husband looks like and should be doing, and you both have an idea of what the wife looks like and should be doing, but you haven't talked about it. And some of it you're going to agree about, some of it you're not. But you get frustrated because and the person's like, why are you so mad at me? He said, because you're the fill in the blank, and you're not doing what you think that person should be doing, whether it's husband or wife. And the person looks at you like, why would you think I would do that? I never told you I would do that. I don't know why you expect me to do that. Well, because you're the wife, you're the husband. Of course I should expect you to do that. Maybe because of the way that person was raised and the families they interacted with and what they observed, that's what they thought that role was all about. And you grew up in a completely different place, in a completely different environment, with different role models, and you never got that message because you never saw that part done that way. And this can really cause a challenge. You know, myself with my wife, her family, she had lots of brothers, a father and lots of brothers, and she would say, she expected me to do certain things that, well, my father always did that, or my brothers always did that. Well, I'm not them. And so we had to adjust to each other. You know, if you know the two of us, you know she's a morning person, I'm a night person. We have not lived in the big cities anymore, so when we put our garbage out, we try to put it out in the morning before it gets picked up because animals will get to it and knock it over and make a big mess. Because there are animals wild enough and coyotes and everything else that will run around in our neighborhoods. And so I said, would it be okay if you put the garbage out? You're up in the morning. I said, if you want me to, this is the adjusting, right? I would be happy to do it. All you have to do is wake me up because I go to sleep late. I don't mind getting up and doing it, but it would be great if you could just do that because, after all, it makes sense you're up. But in her mind, no, that's the man's role. That's what my father and my brothers did. And it took it. Now, we do it that way now, but initially it was a challenge because a mindset had to be altered. Now, guys, I want you to notice how I did it. I said, I think this would work better, but if that's a problem, I'm okay doing it, but I'll need your help just to make sure to wake me up, and I'll get up, I'll do it, I'll go back to bed. Now, you got to understand, I'm saying this because the garbage goes out at 6, 7 in the morning. I go to sleep at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning a lot of the times. So I'm not wanting you to think, oh, he's just wanting to sleep in. I'm just barely halfway into my sleep when this is happening. Because I'm going to normally get up at like 10 and not at 6 or 7 to do something. But she's awake. But you see her initial reaction. That's not my role. That's your role. Well, it can be, or we can adjust. And so we can choose to fight or not, or be offended or not, but we can make the adjustments. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to sit down by yourself when you get time, and you're going to start writing down, as the husband or the wife, this is what you, as the other side of that, can expect from me. This is how I see my role. You don't need scriptural references and all that other stuff and documentation and citations, okay? Just look. Say, look, this is what you can expect from me. I'm offering you this. You're the man, I'm offering you whatever it is, okay? I'm going to take care of the house, I'm going to take care of the mortgage, I'll take care of the cars, whatever it is that you do, all right? And some of that stuff you may not do. Look, I don't know how to fix a car, I don't know how to do any of those kind of things. I'm not very mechanical, not because I couldn't do it, I just never learned how to do any of that stuff. But I do say I'll take care of it, so I take it to the mechanic and take the oil, whatever it is that I need to do. Now understand, you need to communicate with your spouse so that you have shared what they should expect from you. And if you're sharing with each other, then at least you now have something to talk about to adjust. The other thing you're going to write down is what you expect of the other person. As a man, I would say, this is what you're going to expect from me as your husband, and this is what I expect from you as a wife. And then she does the same thing. This is what I expect from you as a husband. This is what I offer you as a wife. Because I know there's times when people look at each other like, well, I never offered you that. I never promised that. When did I ever agree to that? Anybody have any of that in their marriages? Where there are those moments where you're like, well, I never agreed to that. Or people can look at you and you're like, you know, they look at you and say, I never agreed to that. So you may hear it or you may have said it. Or some sort of reaction that feels the same, essentially, without those exact words. Or it's just a frustration that's ongoing because nobody said anything and that it's not what they agreed to. I never signed on for this, you know. Anybody hear the magic words? Well, if I'd have known. I get that in counseling, like, well, we got married and blah, 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 and then all this happened. Is, well, if I'd have known, I would never married her. I would have never married him. Well, why didn't you know? Now, there are some things that people hide in this and that those are serious things that can come up that you could not have known. But most of the things we fight about are pretty petty and stupid, which is true. Just be honest about it. And those things that we fight about that are so petty and stupid are things that we could have known had we actually talked about it. There's nothing that we never fight about anything real. We do. And if it is really a real enough thing, it needs to have counsel or it ends up in divorce. If it's that real. It's the petty stuff that we end up thinking we need a divorce about when it's just petty nonsense. But we're so emotionally triggered by it all that we just can't see straight. Every time I come home, or every time you come home, and you do the, and it's like, really? Can't we just adjust? I've had a couple of guys who come home and they're just not what their wife needs when they first get in the house, because it's hard for a guy. This is something I could teach you. Guys need a transition period, okay? If they're doing something, and now they're going to go do something else, they're in work mode, now they're going to be in home mode. That doesn't just happen with a switch. You have to allow when they come home, they may need some certain things a certain way before they're ready to come over and just say, hi, honey, I'm home and I love you and everything else. No, I'm still dealing with work and I'm still frustrated with this and I'm still kind of figuring out some problem that I have to solve or whatever it is. And it takes a little bit of time. And come up with a routine. Hey, listen, here's a cup of coffee and you can go sit in your chair and do whatever it is that you need to do just to get your head back into family mode. It may take 20 minutes. Guys, if it's an adjustment that your wife needs because she needs you to come in, ready to come in, then take that 20 minutes outside the house before you walk in the door. So you can adjust. So you notice I didn't say that the wife just had to adjust. It can go either way. You can tell your wife, listen, I'm going to be 20 minutes later because I need to get my head the way you want it, or I can come home and do that and just, you need to give me space and keep the kids to themselves till I can transition. And you negotiate that, okay? And then you give them the choice. Which way would you like to do it? I'm realizing I need that space, all right? When when I wasn't counseling until midnight every Saturday, okay, after services, after we eat, I would get done with the day and all the work, and I would go home, and I would need just about an hour to just be not anybody needing me for anything. And so I had this dumb show that I liked to watch, and my family knew Daddy's going to sit down, he's going to watch his dumb show, and then when he's done, he's going to get right back into everything mode. That was just my routine. And then when it was over, I was like, okay, I'm out of my timeout, I'm out of my needing to unwind, and I'm ready to whatever you guys need. You got to learn yourself, learn the other person, and everybody adjusts. So instead of sitting with me and watching or anything else, everybody just kind of left me alone because that's what I really wanted. And then knew when it was over, I was going to come back and join the world again. And it wasn't because I loved the show so much. I just needed that time, which is why I refer to it as a dumb show. Okay, but I just needed that time to not be needed. You may need that time to not have to solve something, whatever it is that you need that time for. I needed it just to be not needed. Because my whole life in this role is everybody needs from me, right? And I don't have any problem with that. But I do need some time where I don't want anybody to need anything. And then the family learns and adjusts. When we go on vacation, I often like to go on cruises because I like the idea that on a cruise, everything's there. I don't have to have the wonderful discussion that I love so much, which is, where do you want to eat? And as soon as we finish eating, 10 minutes later, where are we going to have the next meal? Okay. Because we get on a cruise, I sit down in the buffet, and I don't leave for 8 days, or whatever it is, 4 days. Okay, I just sit, I work, I read, leave me alone, don't need me, do whatever you want on the boat. Oh, you want to get off the boat? Don't ask me to get off the boat. Just go, just do whatever you want to do. I don't want to be needed for 4 days. And my family figures that out and adjusts to it. Because I need some time. Now, when they want to do things with me, I take them to go do stuff that's their time. When I do stuff when I need my time, okay? So I don't want you to think I'm a totally antisocial vacation person. I will go do other things where I take them to a park and them to an event and them to whatever they want to do, and we then go do that because now I'm ready to focus on them. So you got to recognize if you need focus on you or you're ready to focus on others, and talk about it with your family, with your spouse. You have to communicate. All right, so you do the exercise. You go through the process of writing down and clarifying for yourself what you actually are offering and what you expect. And then you sit down with each other and you go over that. Rule 1, you're not allowed to go, you expect what? Because there are going to be some differences in there. You're going to be okay with a good chunk of it, okay? You really are. But there's going to be some things like, really? I remember hearing a teaching on marriage counseling that somebody had done, and it was some psychologist, whoever it was. It doesn't matter. It was just some guidance about when you're counseling people with marriage. And he said he had this couple where they got married, and it never occurred to them in talking about it that he had in his mind that it would be just great if they went out once a year on their anniversary. And she had in her mind date night every week. But they never talked about it. And so she was getting more and more frustrated that he wasn't doing these things, and he was getting frustrated because he didn't realize she had any need for all of that. But then when they talked about it, they decided to do something like once a month or something, which was not exactly what she wanted, but it wasn't what he had thought in either. So they found something to negotiate. Because going on and on that way wouldn't work. I tell people, some people do this a little bit before they get married. They'll talk about, well, how many kids do you want? Because it's a real rough time if you get married and one wants 5 and the other one doesn't want any. That could be a miserable conversation. I have a sister-in-law that wanted a bunch, and the husband turned out didn't want any, and she didn't know that. And they ended up divorced. They did end up with one. So these are all kinds of things. It's not just like who's putting out the garbage. I mean, who's paying the bills? When do they get paid? My wife and I had a situation in the beginning. It wasn't a bad one. She always paid her bills on time, but at the right when they were due. I always paid my bills on time, so both of us were in a good place, but I paid them as soon as they showed up, so I didn't have to think about it or miss it or keep track of it. Now, we had to decide how this was going to happen now that we're together. So we talked about it. And she was happy enough to let me have control over that, and I made sure they got paid as soon as they came in. Now, of course, we do have a few moments when there's a bill that she wants to handle. She goes, I'll handle that. And then a week later, I go, did you pay it? No. A week later, did you pay it? No. It's not due yet. Okay, so I try to stay out of that as best I can. But you work those things out. Now, when I did ask her, I tried not to be angry about it because I did say, yes, you can pay that bill. See, once you make an agreement, you can't get upset about it. She said she wanted to handle that one. I said, fine, then you handle it. I have to let her handle it. And if it doesn't go well, she pays the late fee. All right? It's the way it works. Now, but you want to talk about all aspects of your relationship. What are you doing for intimacy? You know what? The sexual interaction, the intimacy stuff, if you guys are not on the same page with that, that's going to be a problem too. One expects more often than the other, whichever way. And that can go either way. More often than not, it's the man than the woman, but it can go both ways. You know, if you're not getting the intimacy that you want in the frequency that you want, that's going to be a problem. You should talk about it. And it always comes out this way. The one that doesn't think it's that important is always like, well, I don't understand. We just did that last week or yesterday or what? But because the person wants to. That's their personality. And you're thinking, ugh. But you know what? There's lots of things you want that he's thinking or she's thinking, ugh, you know. Why do you want to do so much? Why do you want to take 37 pictures? Well, the same reason why I want to have intimacy with you every other day, okay, instead of like once a month. All right? So if you think you need 37 pictures, you realize I need to be intimate more often, whatever it is. You're laughing because you can recognize these things in your own life. And I'm not saying that's what's happening with me and my wife. I'm just giving you an idea, right? My wife, hopefully, you're welcome. Rocky appreciated that. All right. But I have to make sure the package is right because my wife will watch this eventually and then kill me. Okay, so she is very blue. Okay. And you guys, if you notice, I wear a lot of blue because I'm trying to find some part of it. At least if I could wear it, it gives me something. Okay? Nothing inside blue, but at least I can have it on the outside, I guess. That's what I can do. But see, you think about these things. Okay? You think about these things. And all of that stuff is important. All right, so now, while we're going through all of these experiences, the salve, the soothing oil or cream over all of this that helps you get through the challenges until you find some congruence, some synchronicity with each other, is the love languages. Okay? I don't know who came up with that. I know it's a Christian guy and his wife, whatever, but it's very, very useful. So you can go to 5lovelanguages.com or whatever it is. I think it's the number 5 in the word lovelanguages.com. You can take the test. It's free. And the love languages are, see if I can remember them all, physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, and quality time. Okay? Now, with those things, if you take the test, because you may realize that you and your spouse are fighting all the time because neither one of you feels like the other one loves each other because you're not communicating. And the person goes, well, do you even love me? And the person's like, of course I do. He said, well, how come you never, then one of those 5 things come up that, you know, well, you never buy me anything. Oh, gifts was a problem there. Oh, you never say anything and encourage me. Well, words of affirmation was a problem there. Oh, you never do anything. Oh, acts of service may be the problem there. Or you don't spend time with me. Quality time. See, but what if you are, like I'll give you me and my wife. I'm physical touch and words of affirmation. She's acts of service and quality time. My acts of service quality time is at the bottom. It's her top. Her physical touch and words of affirmation at the bottom. It's at my top. We're like flipped over. We do not speak even remotely the same language. Now, some of you are going to do it and find out you do actually have some commonality in your languages. Okay? And so you get along much better through the challenges because at least the love is being communicated. Again, like the personality stuff, once you know what your spouse's love language is and it turns out it's something you don't speak fluently, you have to make a conscious effort to do it. All right? If I want to make my wife happy, I sent her about through the roof in a good way the other day because I actually vacuumed my office. That was an act of service. She's been on me for months, okay? Because I'm never in it. I don't like to move stuff around. So, it's an act of service. Now, bear in mind, the only thing I'm dealing with in my office is dust. My office is clean. In my house, I don't use it very often, but she wants it done, and sometimes that just means I have to stop everything I'm doing to do it. Or she wants to go do it, but then she'll have to move my stuff. And if you're red, you don't want your stuff moved. Not because it's in a right spot like a blue, it's because you already know where it is and you don't want to look for it again. It'll slow you down. So just understand that you need to speak the language. Now, you take the test. This is not like the color test. If you're blue, you're white, you're red, you're yellow, we kind of know generally what that looks like, what that means once you study about the colors. If your love language is acts of service, it may only be certain types of acts of service. It looks a certain way. Physical touch may be certain things that, physical touch for me doesn't have to be sex. Yeah, because people think, oh, physical touch means sex. Absolutely, it does. But it doesn't have to be that. If my wife reaches over, we're walking, wants to hold my hand, that's great. If she comes up behind me and just gives me a hug, ta-da, I'm happy. Okay? Light bulbs go off because I'm getting some of that. My daughter and I have the same languages. We are not happy if our morning doesn't start off where she comes over and gives me a hug, or I go over and give her a hug and finish the day that way. That's our language. And I tell her she's awesome. She tells me I'm awesome. And we're happy. We have the same language, and we speak it naturally. My wife doesn't speak that language now, so she has to think, if I should go over there and give him a hug, he's going to love that. I have to think of what she likes. Quality time for her is if I say, now I'm not a coffee drinker, but if I said, hey, why don't we sit down and have some coffee and like a little Danish or something, and she's like, oh, that's quality time. But realize I have a different definition of quality time. I may have a different definition. So it can't just be that you know what it's called. It's called words of affirmation. Well, my wife thinks I get that from everybody all the time. I said, no, I need it from you. I don't care that they're saying, well, I don't mean it that way. You understand? I appreciate the words that I get from you guys. I need it from her to feel love in that relationship. When you guys give it, I feel love from you, which is great. But it's not going to help my relationship with her unless it comes from her. But she's thinking, because it's not her love language, well, he hears it from everybody. What's he need it from me for? He knows it was good teaching. I said, no, but I need you to say it. And that's where, when you do the love languages, you need to tell the person that you're in the relationship with what it looks like that they can do, what it looks like to you. If your love language is gifts, they may be thinking, gifts, we're broke. No, you can do all kinds of things that are gifts that don't cost any money. Okay, I think gifts is like my wife's third one. And I used to leave her a little note when we first got married and do little things that were like a gift. Okay? And she loved it. It cost me nothing. One of the most brilliant, there was a flower store in Florida that was brilliant. It was like the savior to all idiot guys, okay? And my wife didn't know this. They had a thing where you paid like $50. It was under $100. And every month you would come in and get the monthly bouquet with those flowers that were typical for that time of year. And it was like a little club, right? You paid your little fee, and every month he came in and got this little, and I brought it home and gave it to my wife. And she thought every month I was being so thoughtful, and and I was. But I made it easy on myself. I didn't have to go to the store and think about, I don't know what to get. Because all those guys go in the stores and like, I don't know. And we look for anybody, give us a suggestion. What would you get? But this was already preset. And I could just come and bring these different things to her. And so when we got together, that felt like some quality time and a gift, because I came over to her, I spent a little time with her, I gave her the flowers, So you need to talk to each other. Remember what I talked about. I said you need to observe, learn, adjust, and part of doing that is your personality stuff, your love languages, and your expectations. The hardest part of this is the word adjust. You see and you learn, oh, yeah, I've got her figured out. Oh, I got him figured out. No. But are you adjusting? You have to adjust. Both of you, right? Not just one. You have to adjust. All right. I'm running out of time here. So let me go ahead and cover. Did that make sense to everybody so far? We good? All right. With the unequally yoked stuff, real quickly, we'll look at it from both perspectives, because everything I just gave would be for the equally yoked and everybody, okay? The unequally yoked have some situations that the equally yoked don't. So let's just deal with those. You have two possibilities. The husband or the wife is the one that's covenanted and the other one's not. All right, so let's deal with the husband is the one who's covenanted. Okay, so then you have certain burdens of responsibility, different than if the wife was the one covenanted, because you are vertically responsible. Notice how I said that. I didn't say you're vertically in charge, or you're the head, you're the leader. I want you to understand it's a responsibility. You're covering. Your leadership and headship is from a serving capacity and a responsibility. And you're responsible for your walk, and you're responsible for your space. And so you can, now I'm not saying it'd be wrong to allow this to be, but you can absolutely and have the right to say, I know that you're not in the same walk with me, and I understand that, but I do not want pork in my house. I don't want shrimp in my house. I don't want a Christmas tree or any of those kind of things in my house, because after all, the key word is it's my house. My house, not meaning, I don't want any of you ladies saying, but I'm the one who pays the mortgage and I haven't put my name. It's the vertical structure we're talking about. I have authority and responsibility of this space, okay? So this house, I'm responsible for what happens here, even though you may be paying for it. This is, and by the way, guys, after taking Elder Billy's class on finances, if you can get yourself in the place where you're really being the provider instead of her, it'll fix a lot of that nonsense that can come out of that. I know that a lot of the ladies can do really well. I'm not saying they should stop. I know a couple where the lady makes a really good living, and the husband and wife decided that she could keep doing what she wanted because she loved doing it, and that he would stay home and raise the kids, and it's worked very well for them. It doesn't often, though. There is a challenge often emotionally, and actually they run into this every now and then too, where I'm making the money. I'm doing this. I should have more authority than normally the woman might have, because after all, I'm the breadwinner. And that's understandable. It's a psychological response, an emotional response to that fact that you're the one who's providing the funds. Okay? Very hard for the one who's providing the funds to let somebody else make decisions about the funds. Okay, if you're the one making the money and you don't get a say, or you some of the things you want to do with it, you're told no, that could be hard. That could be really challenging. So unequally yoked. Now, so we deal with things like what's coming up, right? Christmas is coming up. If you're the man, I think you're responsible to keep that stuff out of your house. But my wife will divorce me. Maybe she will. You already have a not walking together problem. You're not on the same page. Two are not walking together in agreement. So now you got to find an agreement on how you're going to walk together when you're not actually walking together. So you need to allow her to be worldly, Christian, whatever she is. Whatever not covenanted looks like in your house. You need to allow her to do all of that stuff, but in a way that you are also maintaining what you need to maintain. That makes sense, hopefully, to everybody. You don't make her keep Shabbat or make her eat kosher or make her keep the feast. You don't make her do anything religiously. That's a personal, private thing that's going on. She has to walk out her own salvation. However, you have responsibility over the house and certain things happening in the house. This goes to covenanted and uncovenanted. We'll deal with this more tomorrow with the teenagers. But like, say, if you've got a 19-year-old child living in your house, has a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever they've got, and I'm not even going to pick gender because it could be a guy with a boyfriend or a girl with a girlfriend for all you know. Whatever they've got going on, you decide whether any of that stuff is happening in your house. You can't make them not do it outside the house because you can't control it. But it's your house. And you can say, okay, if you're going to live in my house or visit my house, this doesn't happen in my house. I'm not going to judge what you do outside the house because that's your life and your mess. And so in the unequally yoked husbands covenanted, the husband needs to be the one who's setting the tone and establishing the protocols, procedures, and rules of the house. And some of you are afraid to do that because maybe you're white personality or more of a white blue or blue white, so you're kind of that weaker, personality towards inserting and affirming yourself, but also your intimacy issues where you don't want to disappoint, you want to be a pleaser, that whole relationship thing. You have to make, this is going to be hard, I guess, for everybody. You have to make important decisions, not the nonsense decisions. You have to make the important decisions without regard to consequence. In other words, you have to make the right choice because it's right, even though it may not, go as smoothly as you want. It may blow up in your face. You have to do the right thing because it's the right thing. Listen, I come into this thing, and if my wife was not on the same page with me, there would not be a marriage or there would not be a Christmas tree. There's not going to be both. I'm not going to have a Christmas tree with a marriage. I'm either going to have a marriage with no tree, or I'm going to not have a marriage with no tree, but it's not going to be a tree. There's not going to be pork or unclean foods in my house. If we go out to eat and she wants to order at the restaurant, that's fine. If she wants to go do this somewhere else, that's fine. I'm not having it in my house. Not because I'm being all whatever. I think it's my responsibility to have the house be Torah observant. The house, not each individual in it, but the house. Those things I actually have authority over. I can't make her never eat that stuff or make her, you understand what I'm saying? Now, so that we can have an agreement and not get a divorce, we have to talk about it from the point of view of not me just imposing myself and saying, but saying, look, sweetheart, look, I have very strong beliefs. I think we all should be walking out, especially if she's Christian. You can walk out. You can use Philippians 2 with her and say, I'm trying to walk out my own salvation. This is what I believe the Creator has me doing right now. I believe it with all my heart and my might and strength. Scripture tells us to do everything with all your might and strength. I feel a very strong pressure of responsibility, the burden of responsibility to have the house be this. I know you're not going to like some of that. I want to do this in a way that is least problematic for you, but you need to understand this is a line I'm not going to cross. I have to draw this line. And work that out instead of saying, well, I'm doing this and it's just too bad on you. That's not love. You have to at least seek some sort of agreement. Some of you have this problem in your marriages where, especially the man, will just impose things on the woman, never ask her about it. Now, by the way, ladies, he doesn't need your permission, but he should talk to you about it. He should talk to you about decisions he makes because he needs to know and should want to know if his decision is going to cause you any kind of a trouble, a problem, an issue. He still may make the decision and just say, look, I'm sorry if this caused you an issue, but I really feel we need to do this. But he should talk to you about it. So men, don't just make unilateral decisions and don't include your wife. That's terribly insulting, terribly offensive, and doesn't make you a team like you're supposed to be. Yes, you're two walking together with one leading, but you can't just do whatever you want and not include her. That would be wrong. You need to include them. I have something I think we really need to do. I'll talk to my wife and say, look, I really think we need to do this. And I just want to let you know. And if you have any concerns, you certainly can let me know at this point. And maybe I'll change my mind, but I doubt it. But I just want you to know this is what I think we really need to do right now. Okay? But I don't want to just spring it on you and just tell you that it was just forced in your face or whatever. That's not loving. That's controlling. That's imposing. That's bullying. That's not a man. Some of you guys out there think you're being very strong. I'm a strong man. No, you're a very weak man. Treating somebody like that is very weak. You can have strength by having conviction saying, this is not happening here. But I want to do this in a way, if possible, that's least problematic for you. But I just need you to know that this can't happen here. Not like, this isn't happening, and if you don't like it, it's too bad, there's the door. Why would she stay? All right? You're going to crush her spirit. You're going to crush her heart. And you know for a fact in her heart that she's going to believe that you don't love her anymore. And you're thinking, oh, no, I'm just trying to keep Torah in my house. You know, our Jewish brothers have a very, 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 throw 10 more veries on there, strong belief that the highest Torah command is to have shalom in your home. They believe that they should make every effort to have peace in the house. Now, there's not a thought that Torah is being broken in the house, but they feel like shalom in the home exemplifies shalom in the community, shalom in the nation, eventually shalom in the kingdom. Figuring out how to live at peace with each other. And you have to make that effort. If you feel like you have to impose men, then you're being weak. It should flow naturally out of you, that strength, that confidence, that competence, that trust that you earn in leadership with your spouse. You shouldn't have to demand and impose yourself in that strong a way, in that type of a way. Now, you may have to give some strength. There are things that I say and my wife doesn't like it and doesn't want to do it or doesn't whatever, and I have to say, I understand, but we're going to do this, or I understand, but we're not doing that. But. No but. Now, depending on how she responds and I respond to her and back and forth, it could turn into a shouting match. Or it could de-escalate very quickly and we come to an agreement and we can move on. The problem is that we're very bad at accepting and negotiating and how to deal with that whole part. We just want to win. Now, as soon as I get some back talk or any kind of negative response, I should, pay attention, I should be thinking, she feels like she's losing, and I'm trying to win. So how can I repackage this so it's not about her losing, but that she gets something else in addition in a different way or some other thing that we could work out? As opposed to me just saying, you lose, I win. You don't get to have that, I get to have this, or whatever it is. Because that backlash is not just disagreement, it's also feeling like, you don't care about me, I just have to lose. All right? So guys, you need to love your wives when you're unequally yoked. You can make a marriage work. I know lots of people that have when they're unequally yoked, and eventually sometimes, maybe not always or not often, but sometimes they do end up coming in anyway, and then you're equally yoked. But by the way, all you equally yoked people know that your marriages are not free from any of this junk anyway. Being equally yoked has not made marriage any simpler. It's just taken one major issue out of the mix. Okay? Although, I'm sure in your marriages that are equally yoked, at least at some point, one of you looks at the other and say, oh, and you call yourself Torah observant. Oh, and you think you wear your seat, or you do this, or you, oh. I'm sure that comes up. Oh, you think, don't do that. Don't call people out and that kind of thing. Because that's the plank twig thing, where that plank is going to be pulled out of your eye and clobbered you in the head with it. And not by your husband or your wife, but by the Almighty. He's like, you know what? You have this giant plank here. You may want to pay attention. Maybe think of it like Pinocchio, that the plank keeps getting bigger every time you act stupid that way. Anyway, unequally yoked and the wife. We're running out of time here because I think we need to be done in like 15 minutes. So, unequally yoked, the wife situation. Ladies, you have it much more challenged in some ways, okay? You don't have the responsibility. That's the easier part. It's not your responsibility for the house, it's his. But your responsibility is just for your walk, your part. So it's much more personal, which means that you don't participate if he brings the tree in. Okay, sweetheart, I understand that you want to bring in a tree. It's not where I am in my walk, but I'm not going to be decorating it or participating with it because that's not where I'm at. And you have to use the same type of right tone of voice and right approach that I was telling the guys when talking to the ladies. Empathize with the fact that this is important to them and try to help them understand that this is important to you and not say, I'm not doing that pagan stuff. Don't attack what they do. Just say, look, I'm trying to walk out if they're doing Christmas, they have some Christianity in them, tell them, look, I'm just trying to walk out my own salvation with fear and trembling. I really feel like the Father has me in this direction right now, and I really need you to respect that. I will respect that this is your house, and you want to do these things in the house. You want to bring in pork, you want to do these other things, so they can bring all those things in. I'm not going to eat them, and I'm not going to participate in them. You want me to do certain things on Shabbat? I need to keep Shabbat. I'm not going to be doing those things. But try to show them that being covenanted is a blessing to them. You're more attentive, you're adjusting, you're learning, you're observing, you're doing what you can to make it up to them in some way. Because it feels to them like you need to make it up. Not that you do, but that's what it's going to feel like to them. Like you're taking something away or imposing something, so they need something back. All of you in unequally yoked situations, actually all of you in equally yoked situations, everybody involved should see the other person as being improved because of this, not worse. You should be visibly improved. Better husband, better wife, easier to live with, more peace. I mean, if it hasn't changed that part of you, but the mechanics have changed, that's of no use whatsoever. Just the fact that you go to services now on Saturday and eat differently, etc., that's not enough if it hasn't helped you grow as a person into a more Yeshua-like, fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kinder, gentler person. The fruit's got to be there. And if the fruit's there, the person may start to think, you know what, I don't like all of this stuff that's going on mechanically, but wow, I really like the changes in my spouse. He's really stepping up, and he's doing it respectfully, and he's really showing me some caring. She's really stepping up, and she's really, attentive in whatever it is that she's doing. Whatever, take your roles how you want to take them. I don't want to get too specific because I told you get to negotiate that stuff. But ladies, don't get upset, don't get frustrated when they want to do all this stuff in the house. Now, because this is a little different for the wife than for the husband. Because we'll do it with the husband first. If the husband wants to say no tree, no pork, no whatever, the wife may say, that doesn't work for me, I'm out of here. Same thing, ladies, goes the other way. He says, I'm bringing the tree, I'm bringing the bacon and all the other stuff. You may just say, I know that I don't have a right to impose on you, but I really can't stay in this environment. That may happen too. I'm not saying you have to stay or have to go. There is no, get that whole Christian thing out of your head. There is no scriptural requirement that you need anything specific to end a marriage. Don't quote Matthew at me and all this other stuff. That's not what it says. Go listen to the teaching. You can end a marriage for any reason. And the reason should always be we cannot walk in agreement. Okay, we can, and by the way, not walk in agreement doesn't mean, well, he doesn't agree with me. No, you have to walk in agreement with each other. Okay? You don't have to agree to him or he doesn't have to agree to you completely. You have to both agree on how you're going to do this together. And you may not want to be in a house with the Christmas tree and the pork and all the other stuff. And so you have that option. I'm just simply saying that there's nothing sinful or incorrect scripturally for you to stay and allow him to do as long as you don't participate. Does that make sense? All right? I wanted to kind of clear that up. I wish I had left time for questions and all that kind of stuff. There wasn't enough time for that. I've got about 5 minutes left here. Is there anybody that wants to just ask a real quick question that feels like it's kind of urgent and wants to just come up to the mic real quick? No, good. Rob, did you have anything real quick to get to? I see you're very distracted by that beautiful woman sitting next to you. His wife is sitting with him. Okay, so, all right, so let me just say a few encouraging words as we wrap this up. I know there's times when you wonder, whose idea was this thing, marriage? This is just a disaster over and over again. But you know what? There's nothing that exists that can have a strong enough effect or as strong an effect on your growth as marriage. There's nothing that can stimulate that kind of growth. There's nothing that'll bring all your challenges out like a marriage. Yes, you can do all those things as singles. Don't get me wrong, all you singles. And hopefully if you're single, you listen to this and learn something so that when you get married, you know what you're getting into and what you can do. There's no greater joy than if you are walking, for whatever period of time you manage to do it in that agreement, in that achadness. There is a completeness that you can feel that you can't get any other way, which is why people get married again and again and again, because they're trying to find that, okay? But that's only something you can find if you work at it together. It doesn't just have a natural occurrence. You have to work at it. We're not naturally, oh, but we're so compatible. Yes, that's when you were dating and you're a man and she's a woman or whatever. And so then you get married, though. And if you can't put on the husband and the wife hat, you're still going to have your problems. Because you can't just keep going the way you are. Because you were a man or you were a woman and you were going out on dates and you were interacting independently, knowing someday you might get together and be echad. But that whole thing is so different if you don't put on the hat and shift into that specialized type of man and woman, wife and husband, right? And you can do this. I think marriage is awesome. I also think a lot of you are in marriages that you either need to, and this is the most important thing, you really either need to really come and sit down and get counsel, or you really need to think about ending it. And I'm not trying to encourage anybody to get divorced. It's not helping anybody to be this angry and miserable all the time. So my suggestion would be to come and get help. Now, this is where I'm going to hit the guys just a little bit. Most of the reason help isn't happening is because you, men, have too much pride and too much ego, too much vanity and insecurities and all that other stuff, and afraid of being shamed in some way that you won't come. When I have a couple with issues, more often than not, the wife will come, the husband won't. I don't understand that. See, if you're a man, that should never be an issue. You shouldn't be afraid of owning what you are, owning what you're doing, owning your stuff, and having somebody hear and know that you might not be perfect. This is important. Guys, stop being afraid to counsel. When I get lists and lists of counsel, look, I don't know how much you understand, but I'm here like I was yesterday from 9 o'clock when we started our services in the morning, all the way till midnight finishing counseling every day. And most of the individual, the one-on-ones are the ladies. Now, some of them are single, and they're trying to figure out what to do now that they're widowed or this or that or whatever it is. But some of them are marriages. And I'm not just talking about now. I'm talking about in general. So I don't want some of you guys thinking, oh, my wife went. No, I'm saying all of you guys, you need to know. If your marriage is having issues that you're struggling to fix, come and see me. Now, let me just tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab you by the head, and I'm going to squeeze it real. No, okay. I'm going to do something very simple. I'm going to make an opportunity. I'm going to create a space where you might actually hear each other. You understand? Let's say the wife goes first. She says something. Doesn't matter. Or the man goes first. Doesn't matter. Whoever goes first says something. Before they say 5 things, I will often interrupt and say, hold on one second, and I'll look at the other person and say, is that true? Well, he did this or he said that. Okay, wait. Is that true? I don't want all the details of why and excuses. Is that true? Okay. So the things that are going, I want each one that's hearing each other. I also want to make sure that you don't interrupt each other. I may interrupt you and try to guide things just to make sure that we're not trying to handle 6 things at the same time instead of 1 at a time. But I'll make sure, ladies and men, because sometimes either one of you, it doesn't matter, it's not always the one or the other, won't let the other one say anything, but talks over them and interrupts them and doesn't feel like you could ever be heard. If you sit in front of me, I am not going to allow that. I'm going to create a space where you will be heard. And I will then ask the person, okay, the wife is talking or the husband's talking and saying all these things, and I'll look at the other person. Did you hear that? I don't mean, did you agree with everything they said? Do you see how upsetting this is and why this hurt? That their interpretation of it hurt them in some way. Do you get that? That's real. Well, but there's no reason that should have hurt him or hurt her. No. We're not dealing with that yet. First, we're going to make sure you understand that it did create that pain. Whether you thought it should or not, that's real. What we can get to, is it an overreact? Is it this or that? Later. Let's start with reality and make sure that we are validating each other. So that's the other big thing that I will do with you in a couples counseling, is validating. Now, I want you to understand what validating means. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that what they said was valid, like you agreed with it. I want you to understand that you are accepting that to them, that's their reality. Do you understand that that person interpreted what happened and this is how they felt? Yeah, but I don't understand why they would feel that way, blah, blah, blah. No. I want you to understand that that is the way they feel, that this is their real feeling. Whether they should have felt that way or not is not the point yet. But I need you to accept that that's a real feeling and a real response from who they are based on what they experienced and how they filtered and interpreted what they experienced with you. And then when it's their other person's turn, we'll do the same thing. That person will talk and I'll say, did you receive that? Do you see and receive and validate that that's really how they felt about it? Because what happens is we dismiss if we don't think they should have felt that way. Well, I don't understand why he gets so mad. I don't understand why she gets so mad. I don't know. The key word there is I don't understand. But your not understanding doesn't make it any less real to them. And so I help with that in the counseling. Okay? And so, don't be afraid of it. Come and get the help you need. Because remember, and I'm going to finish with this, there's only 3 options. You fix it, you fix it, work it out, you accept it and be okay with it, or you end it. There's no 4th option. The best option is to work it out and fix it. And sometimes, often enough, it needs a third party not to impose anything. I'm not going to judge and decide who's right. I'm going to get you guys to actually hear each other and listen and validate that the other person really did feel that way about what you did, whether they were right about it, wrong about it. It's from all of their life experiences, that all those filters, that's their interpretation of what happened in their experience with you, and this is how it made them feel. This is their response. Well, that's just stupid. Well, then you might as well get a divorce. If that's the way you feel about the person's real feelings, even though you don't understand or agree with why they have them, you just think it's stupid, well, then why are we even doing this? Your reaction, if it's that way, is stupid. Their feelings are real, even if you don't understand why they're there, but they're real. And so I want you to hear each other's real feelings. And I want you to validate that those feelings are real. Not that they're right to have or appropriate, but that they're real. Does it make sense to everybody? All right, amen. All right, so we're going to close it with that. I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray as we close here. Father, we come before you, and Father, we know that the institute of marriage, the whole idea of marriage is your idea. And so, Father, whether we understand it or not in its fullness, we accept that there's a reason for it, that there's a precious blessing in it if we can understand it and do it with all of our strength and might and following along in the examples and the models that you give us. So, Father, we ask now that you would help all of us to get past our pride, our egos, our fears, our insecurities, all those things that are keeping us from either working things out with our spouses or getting the help to work things out with our spouses. All of us are contributing to the challenges in our marriages. We need to all own that individually. Father, help us to own it individually. It doesn't matter in our minds if we may think the other one is more to blame or this or that. If you can't own that there's parts of this that we can't own that part of it is ourselves, we're never going to get anywhere. So, Father, we want to thank you for structure, for guidance. I want to thank you for the opportunity to bless and help and serve all of the people that you send my way in their marriage challenges. And I want to ask that you would give them the inspiration to do the things that are necessary to bring that shalom and peace into their home. So, Father, we want to thank you. We want to praise you. We want to give you all glory and honor in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. 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 All right. Enjoy your lunch.